The winter wind sliced through the late evening air as Daniel Reed, a 34-year-old single father with tired eyes and a mechanic's oil-stained hands, locked up the small auto repair shop where he'd been working overtime for the third night in a row. The streets of Brookhaven City were nearly empty, drenched under flickering streetlights and the distant echoes of traffic, and by his side walked his 8-year-old son Owen, clutching a tattered school backpack and sleepily rubbing his eyes after finishing his homework in the garage office like he had done countless times before. Daniel had gotten used to this rhythm, exhaustion for him, silence for Owen, and just as they reached the quiet intersection near the old bakery, the peace shattered. A small girl in a pink coat, no older than 6, broke free from her nanny's distracted grip and bolted into the street chasing a fluttering white balloon that danced in the wind. At the same moment, a black SUV screeched around the corner, far too fast, and Daniel reacted before thinking, hurling himself forward with explosive instinct, scooping the child into his arms and twisting his body to shield her as the roar of the engine thundered closer. But before the SUV even reached them, a deafening gunshot split the night, the bullet tearing through Daniel's back with brutal force. He stumbled, his knees buckling, his arms tightening protectively around the terrified girl as Owen screamed, "Dad," from the sidewalk. The SUV didn't stop, it accelerated, tires screeching, vanishing as fast as it came, a setup, an escape, a ghost, leaving only chaos in its wake. Daniel collapsed onto the pavement, still shielding the trembling girl whose balloon floated uselessly into the sky, his vision dimming as cold seeped into his bones. He fought to stay conscious, whispering hoarsely, "You're okay. I've got you," while his own blood pooled beneath him. People began to rush over, someone shouted to call an ambulance, the nanny fell to her knees sobbing, gripping the little girl who refused to stop crying for "Mommy." As the world faded in and out around Daniel, the echo of running footsteps approached, fast, furious, desperate, and through his fading vision he saw a woman in a black executive coat, power and panic blazing in her eyes, sprinting toward them with the urgency of a mother who had everything to lose. Her voice cracked into the night, "Lila." Just as she reached him, freezing in horror at the sight of her daughter wrapped in the arms of a bleeding stranger. Daniel blinked slowly, the world flickering like a dying light, and the last thing he heard before paramedics rushed in was the little girl whimpering against his chest, "Please don't die, please don't die." The bright white lights of St. Vincent's emergency unit *** washed everything in a harsh sterile glow as Elena Carter, one of the city's most powerful CEOs, stood frozen with her trembling daughter Lila clinging to her waist, her breath shallow, hands shaking despite being a woman known for never breaking composure, not even in boardrooms of billion-dollar stakes. But nothing in her empire of control had prepared her for the sight of her little girl covered in another man's blood. That man lay unconscious now, being rushed past sliding ICU doors, paramedics shouting vitals as they wheeled him into trauma surgery, the words, "bullet wound to the thoracic region" echoing coldly in the air. Elena could barely process it. One moment she was leaving a high-level investor dinner, her phone exploding with security alerts, and 3 minutes later she was running through traffic like a madwoman, arriving just in time to see her daughter held safely in the arms of a stranger who was bleeding out from a gunshot meant for no one but fate itself. She knelt before Lila, wiping her tears. "He saved you?" she asked softly. Lila nodded rapidly, breath hitching. "He covered me like a hero, Mommy. He didn't even think, he took the bullet." The word struck Elena like a blow. A man she had never met had sacrificed, his life for her daughter without hesitation. As doctors disappeared behind heavy doors with him, a nurse approached Elena gently. "Ma'am, you need to fill out a statement for the police. They believe it was a gang-related drive-by. Your daughter was just caught in the chaos." Elena's jaw tightened with a suppressed rage. Her daughter almost died because she was simply existing, and the only reason she was breathing now was because a working-class stranger threw himself in front of a bullet like she was his own. "What's his name?" Elena demanded. The nurse checked her clipboard. "Daniel Reed, 34, single father, came in with his son. Looks like they were just walking home." Elena's heart dropped. He had a child. He wasn't just a hero, he was someone's everything, just as Lila was hers. She glanced toward the waiting area and saw a small boy, Owen, perhaps 8, sitting motionless on a plastic chair, fists shaking, eyes red with fear but trying, desperately, to be brave. Elena slowly approached. "You must be Owen," she said softly. The boy looked up, and in a quiet, breaking voice, he asked her the question that shattered her, "Is my dad going to die?" Elena, a woman who could move global markets with a single sentence, felt her throat close, her voice fail, because for the first time in years, she had no answer. The room was quiet except for the rhythmic beep of the heart monitor when Daniel Reed finally opened his eyes, his chest burning with every breath, vision blurry as the sterile hospital ceiling slowly came into focus. Confusion first, then pain, then the vivid memory of a pink coat and a white balloon, and before he could even move, a soft gasp broke the silence. Elena Carter stepped forward from the corner of the room where she had been standing in silence for nearly an hour, her business armor shed, no guards, no assistants, no boardroom intimidation, just a shaken mother with tears still drying on her face, and for a moment, Daniel thought she was a hallucination, too perfect, too composed to be real, until she whispered, voice trembling, "You're awake." He tried to sit up, pain shot like fire through his back. She instinctively stepped forward to steady him, but he flinched slightly, out of instinct, not distrust, and she stopped, hands shaking as she said, softer this time, "Please, don't move. The bullet, it missed your lung by millimeters." His eyes widened, survival felt suddenly unfamiliar. Then his first words, not about himself, "My son, Owen." Elena's throat tightened. "He's outside, with Lila. He refused to leave the hospital until you woke up." Daniel exhaled, a raw, broken relief, then looked at her, brows furrowing slightly. "I remember you, you were the mother." She didn't wait, she fell to her knees beside his bed, something no one in her corporate world had ever witnessed, eyes glistening as she whispered, "You saved my daughter's life. You took a bullet for her. How do I ever repay that?" Daniel blinked, stunned, not by her gratitude, but by the fact that she looked like the one drowning. He shook his head weakly. "You don't owe me anything." Her breath hitched, as though those were the words she feared most. "No," she said shakily, "you don't understand. In my world, everything has a price. Everything is transactional. But you risked your life for someone you didn't even know." Daniel looked at her steadily, voice rough but steady. "Because she was just a child." Those words, simple, modest, destroyed her. In that moment, Elena Carter, woman on magazine covers, billionaire visionary, feared and revered, felt small before a mechanic with hospital tape on his chest. She couldn't speak. Instead, her composure broke, a silent tear finally escaped, and Daniel, who had endured more pain than most, felt more helpless in that moment than when he'd been bleeding on the street. Slowly, painfully, he lifted his hand, and gently wiped her tear away. No words. Just a touch. And for the first time in years, Elena Carter felt human again. Winter sunlight filtered through the hospital window the next morning, soft and golden, casting a gentle glow across Daniel's face as he sat slowly upright with the nurse's help, trying to hide the pain from Owen, who was curled up asleep on the visitor's chair with Lila leaning unknowingly against his shoulder, their heads touching, two children born from opposite worlds, now bound by a moment that would never leave them. Across the room stood Elena Carter, no longer the untouchable CEO, but a mother, humbled, shaken, transformed, and when Daniel finally met her eyes, she took a breath, as if bracing for war, even though all she carried was gratitude. "I want to take care of everything," she said quietly but firmly. "Your bills, your son's school, anything you choose. A house, a business, name it." Daniel stared at her for a long moment, not in awe, not in hesitation, but in gentle refusal. "I didn't do it for a reward," he said softly. Elena didn't look surprised, her eyes only softened more. "I know, that's why I can't walk away." She stepped forward slowly, her voice dropping to a level that even the air seemed to hold its breath to hear. "Let me help you, not because I owe you, but because I want to. Daniel's stare wavered, just for a second, and that's when Owen woke, blinking sleepily before rushing to his father's side. Instantly, Lila stirred too, and upon seeing Daniel awake, she smiled and whispered, "You're my hero." The room went still. A mechanic with nothing, and a billionaire with everything, stood in the same silence, equal in the only moment that mattered. Daniel sighed quietly, then finally nodded. "I don't need money. Just a chance." Elena smiled, not the polished corporate smile of magazine covers, but something real. "Then I'll give you one," she promised. 3 months later, Daniel wasn't standing in a garage, he was walking into a state-of-the-art automotive innovation lab, hired personally by Elena as Director of Advanced Vehicle Engineering, not charity, but partnership. Owen and Lila laughed in the hallway outside the glass offices, best friends now, and for the first time in years, Daniel didn't feel like he was surviving. He was living. As they stood overlooking the city skyline one evening, the sun setting behind the towers, Elena turned to him and said quietly, "That night. I thought you saved my daughter." Daniel looked back at her, and for the first time, allowed his guard to truly fall. Elena's gaze softened as she whispered, "But now I know, you saved me too." And for a moment, just before the lights of the city flickered on, the world felt right.